What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Why We Love PlayStation VR. Sitting across from me this week and every week, the reason birds can fly and we can't is simply because they have perfect faith. For to have faith is to have wings. It's Desra.
No, it's just because they have wings and hollow bones. And sitting across from me, of course, is Brian Paul.
Maybe that makes more sense. And every week on Why We Love PlayStation VR, we dip into the PSVR archive, we pull out a game at random, we play the crap out of it, we see if it's been getting any love by developers, any patches, any updates, any DLC, and then we decide whether it's worth your time.
Yeah, so this is a weird situation because, usually, that's kind of our mandate. Find an older game, and every once in a while we break format, we talk about a game that just came out. Mm-hmm. This is a weird situation where we're actually doing both.
I like doing both.
Right, so this is a game that came out very recently and had a major update. Mm-hmm. This, of course, is Falcon Age.
Falcon Age by Outer Loop Games, released on April 9th, not that long ago, although, according to when my review came out, fairly recently, for $19.99. If you're not familiar with Outer Loop Games, this is the same team from Uber Entertainment, who made, I think we did both of these for episodes of Why We Love.
We have, actually. Wayward Sky and Dino Frontier, yes.
Yeah, it's like a small team. It's around 8 people. Mm-hmm. They all worked on each game, but this is their first one as their own independent team, Outer Loop Games.
Yes.
That being said, what kind of game is this, Desra?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It's funny, like we're doing this right on the heels of Conrad the Kitten. Or Conrad's Kittens. The name is so confusing now. And, in some ways, this is kind of a virtual pet game.
Yeah.
Except your pet is a, flying death machine.
Yeah.
Which makes it way cooler. You're basically, you're exploring, I guess it sort of has RPG sort of elements, adventure sort of elements, and then there's combat too. But the main focus is your relationship with the bird.
That is the main focus. Yeah, I love that we're calling it sort of a virtual pet, but it's also an adventure. I actually want to stay as far away from the words RPG as possible, and I think we'll go into more detail about why that's maybe inappropriate later. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the game starts off. Mm-hmm. You're a girl named Ara, is that right?
A Sarangarai.
So Ara it is.
Sarangarai.
Ara.
And that's actually, I had a note on that right off the bat. Like, one of the things the game says is, it's all about identity and tradition. And Sarangarai, has a discussion later with another character saying that, the bots, the Outer Loop, or no, not Outer Loop, Outer Ring company, they don't even bother actually saying her name because it's hard for them to pronounce.
Right.
And it's like, showing it's kind of a little disrespect, kind of a deliberate jab to say, they couldn't be bothered. And the game immediately stops pronouncing her name.
Do you think there's any correlation between the guy who made the game, whose name is Chandana, and who everyone calls Eka because his name's too hard to pronounce?
Yes. Oh, and that's obviously, this is clearly a very personal story.
Yes.
And it's a great, kind of getting this perspective on a colonization type story from the point of view of the colonized.
Right. So you're Ara.
Ara, Sarangarai.
And you're locked in a prison, and captured, imprisoned by your robot colonizers.
Yes.
And you're basically, as the game starts off, you're like forced to do manual labor. Mm-hmm. And then it seems like you've been doing this for a really long time. And doesn't it? There's even a message that pops up like day 54 or something.
Yeah,
like,
no,
we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, the game does. It is a interesting choice for a game where the whole thing is about, hey, this is you and your bird.
Yep.
For the first 10 minutes or so, you're basically in prison.
Right.
And you're going out and doing manual labor, and you don't even see the bird. Nope. You do a day's worth of work, and you sort of get interviewed by this very sort of condescending, robot who's there to re-educate you and make you a good citizen, etc. And then eventually, at the end of your prison sentence, you do, well, not exactly at the end, but you do meet the bird for the first time.
Yeah, you sort of create the end of your prison sentence. One of the robot colonizers attacks a bird outside, and you end up basically with a broken bird.
Yes,
a bird that needs your assistance, a little tiny baby falcon.
Yep.
And this is where my love affair for Little Tornado began. So basically, from this point on, you're able to whistle by putting the move controller up to your face and clicking the trigger.
Yep.
Right. So it feels very much like that.
If you're like one of the people who can do that whistle thing with your fingers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And your little bird, she'll fly over and then she'll land on your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can pet it and you can tell it what to do and this whole thing and like this relationship starts off. But man, the way she looks at you.
Yeah.
Right. And she's got these big blue eyes. And when you're moving your hand, her head basically stays still.
Right.
But the body moves with your hand, and it's just like the most adorable thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've actually had like birds as pets or they'll do that. They'll kind of like even chickens will do it. They'll kind of like lock eyes with something, and their just head stays.
So odd.
Yeah. It's a very cool thing, and especially for like birds of prey like that. There's actually at the local nature museum here called the Ecotarium, there's a hawk called Jello who does that exact same thing. It's very cool.
I just learned something.
Yeah, she's called Jello because her neck looks like Jello when she moves like that.
I just learned another thing. Anyway, so you get out of prison and basically you go find your auntie and the whole quest begins.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about trying to take down the refineries and reclaim your land.
Right. And this definitely, this world, which do we ever actually get a name for the world?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think so. I was kind of looking for it, but it doesn't actually ever say where you are. So, but yeah, this is a place that has massive environmental damage done by the Outer Ring Company, kind of stripping it for mining or whatever. And that comes to one of the questions about the game is like the environments are fairly bare,
right?
Fairly barren. There are animals that you can send your bird to go hunt and kill and whatnot, but there aren't a lot of them,
right?
And even as far as NPCs and other places. So the question becomes: is the world barren and bare because of a stylistic choice, or is it because of limitations on the game?
Since PlayStation VR launch, this is their third game,
right?
So I mean, this is the very, very small development team. I'm sure limited resources, limited development time, and this is our way around it. We have a story that we can tell to kind of mask that.
Yeah. And
also we're going to play with the lighting a little bit so it doesn't seem so identical from place to place. Mm-hmm. And I think that was sort of their workaround.
See, I don't find it like I liked the space. I don't think it was. I mean, I guess it was fairly identical, but that's okay because that's the kind of space you were in. Mm-hmm. Like if you're in a desert environment, it does look the same, and there are subtle differences here and there that you can pick up. There were vegetation. There were areas that didn't have vegetation. There were areas that it changed kind of drastically. So I really enjoyed the environment. I enjoyed moving around in that space.
This is going to be a theme, I think, for me, mm-hmm. where. From an audio video standpoint, I did an entire review for this game.
Yes,
and I never mentioned the graphics or the sound.
Okay,
because sometimes I just don't feel like there's anything worth mentioning, and I feel like this was like it's got a style to it. Mm-hmm. But I also think that like it's not good or bad. I think it serves the purpose, and I was fine with that. I wasn't like, oh man, mm-hmm. this is boring and repetitive. Yeah, I was like this. Just suits the purpose, and I'm fine with that.
See, I loved some of the character design, and the times where there was specific technology or things like that. There were kind of just a lot of like generic crates and boxes, but when you saw some of the machinery and all that, I did like the aesthetic to it. And again, like Auntie's character design was fantastic. I want to see like the movie with Auntie as the main character. So those kind of choices, but I can definitely see what you mean as far as like graphic, like level of detail and graphical polish that isn't quite there. Like it's fully serviceable, but yeah, it's really, I mean, it's kind of getting away from the point of manipulating, the bird and working with that.
Right.
And you said you can tell it what to do. Well, actually, like you point to some, an object in the distance, and it will go fly and grab it for you and bring it back.
Right.
Or you can have it hunt to varying levels of difficulty depending on what kind of animal you're hunting, and also you use it in combat.
Right.
Which we haven't even discussed yet.
Let's talk about combat.
All right.
Because you're given a baton, like an electric baton, and it also serves as an electric whip, mm-hmm. which is really cool.
Yes.
Anytime you have something in your hand in VR and it kind of resembles the thing you're holding, aka the move controller.
Yeah.
It just seems to work so well, and I think this is one of those examples where you're like, I've got this baton. Oh, I'm holding a kind of a baton.
Yep.
And it feels good. The whip in general goes where you want it to go, and on top of that, whenever you find like these little huts that are blocked off by 2x4s, you take that baton and you're like dunk dunk dunk, and there's something very, very satisfying about just knocking those 2x4s off the wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as combat goes, it's very satisfying to team up with Tornado. I'm keeping that name. I don't care what you say, because each opponent, there's a different technique you need to use.
Right.
Sometimes you can just go up and whack it on the head, but most of them you require the assistance of your bird.
Right. There's some little team up you need. Sometimes you need to stun the bot so the bird can attack. Sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes you need to. There's one enemy type, the kind of claw robot, that you basically can stun it to stop it from attacking you, but you can't really hurt it.
Right.
You need to stun it for long enough so the bird can come in and basically hang it by its feet so you can walk up and smash it.
Yeah, it exposes the weak point.
Right. And so, they're really, I can only think of one enemy class that basically you can defeat completely by yourself. Almost all of them require some level of cooperation between you and the bird.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is is a really cool mechanic and interesting. But what ends up happening is it is very easy in cases to get overwhelmed. Like, so you have, and there's not, which is weird to say because there's not a lot of bots and enemies going on. But when you go into, say, the refineries, there are these cannons which sort of are firing darts at your bird, which, he can't actually die, but if it takes enough damage, it basically will just kind of hang out and not help you anymore.
Right.
So you have to call it back and do one of the most, this is something that is disturbing and sad and never gets easier.
It's heart-wrenching.
It flies back to you, and now its feathers are all kind of disheveled and falling apart.
Stained with blood.
It's stained with blood, and it's got all the needles stuck in it, and to make it get better, you've got to pull the needles out of it, which is just, it's a fantastic idea. It gives you some feedback about how this is violent and painful and bad, and this thing I love is getting hurt.
Yeah.
And I actually have to undo the damage, and even that's not enough. Then I have to give it health to make it feel better
By petting it.
Oh.
Right. And if this doesn't, if this idea, this concept doesn't resonate with you, I'm going to tell you right now to steer clear of this game completely. Right? If you're like, this sounds dumb.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to create a bond with this bird. If that sounds dumb to you, just stay away.
Yeah.
Because this is the core mechanic. The rest of the game is fine. Right? Everything works fine. Everything's fine. But man, if you don't want to connect with this bird and pet it to make it feel better, which you're gonna want it to. It's strange to say.
Yeah.
But man, I fell in love with this bird, and you're right. It never got easier to pull those needles out and to try to make it feel better. It always felt like you let it down.
Yeah.
You need to be this bird's, even though you're working together as a team, you need to be this bird's protector, and you feel like you totally screwed up if it comes to you battered and damaged.
Yeah, and it's interesting you make that point. I think I told this story on the live show, but at PAX East this year. I was lucky enough to kind of hook up with Eka, and actually gave us a demo of it before launch. And I was there with my daughter. And so she was actually kind of the first person to try it while I was talking with Eka, kind of, watching her play. And at one point, after a couple minutes, she's like, oh my gosh, it feels like it's really there. It really feels like there's a bird there. And I was able to look over him, and he was just absolutely beaming because that was the whole point. And you can definitely tell so much of the focus was on making the interactions with the bird real. Well, I can't say real because I'm almost certain a trained falcon will not actually fist bump and go like this.
Right, but it does feel real.
Right, it feels real, and it gives it its own life and its own attitude, its own personality. Which is fantastic.
There are a few things you can do that directly correlate with taking care of the bird. There's farming.
Mm-hmm.
Farming is basically you plant fruit,
right,
and then grow more of that fruit.
Yes,
and then you combine it and craft buffs.
Yeah. So your basic health recharge, defense recharge, speed boosts. etc. So, but you can't do them all right away. Right. You have to either unlock or find new recipes as you kind of go through and explore.
Right. So basically, all of the farming and all of the crafting revolves around creating these buffs for your bird.
Right.
So that's all of that. Mm-hmm. Also, almost all of the shopping. There's very, very little shopping involved that doesn't have to do with the bird. I think, and like 99% of what you're buying for the bird is all cosmetic, all custom, just like little trinkets, little like bandanas, things you can put on the bird, accessorize it, or just little toys it can play with for a couple seconds.
Yeah,
it's more of a collectible game than anything else, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's quite 90%, because that was one thing I was like, oh, really? I'm just gonna sit there and unlock. I mean, there are some of those things do have buffs that actually make it harder for enemies to hear your bird, or there's shock beaks and rubber band things that help it deal with shocking enemies without taking damage. Yeah. But yeah, the vast majority are cosmetic, but they're really interesting cosmetic. There's like Shiba Inu heads, so your bird can have a dog's head.
Now, I don't want to discount how awesome all of this cosmetic stuff is, or the little toys, or all the tricks and all that stuff. I don't want to discount that, right? Because again, as I already said, if you're not interested in that, you might not want to play this game.
That's fair.
But it does add up to another problem. Mm-hmm. All the cosmetic stuff, all the farming, all of the crafting, most of the shopping, it's all unnecessary.
That's true.
This is a problem because there are all these amazing mechanics where you're like, oh, I just saved this farm. Oh, now I've got this farmland that I can use, that I can you find like a fruit or vegetable or something that's uncommon. Like, I'm going to go grow more of this, right? And then you're like, oh, look at all these recipes I found. I can create buffs for my falcon. Never once during the entire game did I need to create a buff.
Nope.
Never was I like, oh man, my falcon's just not powerful enough to get the job done. Never.
Right.
In fact, outside of the tutorial, my first time through, I never farmed and never created a buff, ever. So this is a problem. I really would have loved it if all of the farming and all the crafting and all that stuff created something other than temporary power-ups.
Right.
I would have loved if your bird had a bunch of RPG stats. See, we did get back to it. And you're like, okay, if I create this recipe, it ups her HP a little bit,
right?
Or ups her attack power, ups her, electricity defense. Like all these stats would have been amazing, and then that would have given me hours and hours and hours of entertainment searching the land for all the hidden stuff, because there's a bunch of hidden stuff to find throughout the world, and be like, I am. Now I feel like I'm doing my due diligence, taking care of this bird.
Right.
Every time she comes to me and she's filled with needles, I'm like, oh, what did I do? But I would have loved to make it up to her by making her stronger.
Yeah, even some kind of like, Borderlands-esque like skill tree where you have like all these different decisions. Like, oh, do I want just a super fast bird, or I want a super one, strong that can take a lot of damage? Making choices like that. The other thing is like the implied promise of the game is you're going to get to see the bird grow up from a hatchling into a full-grown adult.
Yeah. And
you don't do that. It's like it's little and then now it's big. And if you're, as you were saying, you had some kind of implementation where you could, build up the stuff, make the special recipe, and see it slowly get larger and larger, you'd be that much more invested. I mean, as it is, you can just kind of switch back and forth between the adult and kid versions by changing the hood it's wearing.
Yeah, because even that's cosmetic.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And I will say, I played the game the way it was meant to be played the first time around.
Yeah.
And once the Falcon grew up, which was very quickly, I played as the adult Falcon, it's a badass Falcon.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not real cute.
Right. No.
So my second time through, I pretty much played as the baby Falcon the whole time, and I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is. There is no difference between the baby and the adult. It's not stronger or anything like that. The other thing that kind of, I guess, goes into the RPG-esque thing is the list of tasks. Like my bigger issue than any of that we've talked about was there's no indication between, is this a mandatory task or is this a side quest? Is this quest going to move the story along, or is it just kind of hey, go off and do something? because so we were talking as I was playing and just oh, how far along are you? How far along? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like 3 hours in, and I don't think I'm at the end yet. And you were kind of surprised by that. Well, what it was I was doing every side quest because in this case specifically, I just got it in my head. There's a minefield you have to go through, and they said, oh, you need to get something that can let your bird dig. It was basically, and it's like, oh, I need digging claws. Well, the one place you can buy it, you can't buy it. So I'm like, oh, it must be something I unlock from a quest. So I'm finding, like, just exploring every nook and cranny of the maps that were unlocked to me, trying to find just someone or something to get those digging claws.
Right.
Turns out I didn't need them. What I needed was the sonar thing that I already had to get through the minefield.
You just needed to equip it.
So I burned probably an hour and a half just going back and through, just not knowing.
I don't. So to answer your question, what's a side quest and what's not a side quest? I'm after playing this game fully from beginning to end twice, and experiencing a lot of those issues the first time through, going, how the heck do I do this and how the heck do I do that? I've come to the conclusion that there are no side quests.
Yeah.
That everything the game tells you to do, just go do it. Just go do it, and don't. You don't really need to go outside. Think outside the box or go outside the boundaries. Just go from objective to objective to objective, and you will get what you need pretty much as you need it.
Yep. And which of course I discovered after it happened.
And I will say, just sort of relevant to our discussion about going from place to place. This is, I'm going to call it an open world, but man, it's like a real small open world.
Yes.
Right. Because you never see any load screens from place to place. But man, there's like a lot of like little curly paths and stuff. And you're in one location. You're like, well, how do I get to that location? You can click a button. And I love this. Yeah. Right, because I want this in Jupiter and Mars. Unfortunately, like dolphins don't have hands to hold maps. Yeah. But you do as a person, and you click a button, and there's a map, and you can, in real time, you can watch yourself moving around the map.
And you can watch the direction you're pointing, which is even better.
Even better, because navigating this world, I've got a horrible sense of direction. Yeah. And navigating this world would be impossible without that map. So, in like half of my gameplay footage here, you're just gonna see, like it's gonna be a map, just like being like I'm lost. I'm trying to get from location to location. I'm just using this map constantly, and it doesn't help that, as we discussed earlier, a lot of the locations look very similar. So you're like, I don't really remember how to get from this place to that place.
Which actually begs the question. One thing we love, we are always on team options. And if you want movement options, you got them.
Boy, do you got them.
Yeah. You want teleportation? We got you. You want smooth turning? We got you. You want free locomotion? We got you. And with the update, so originally you were locked in. You had to have the bird on your left hand, and you had to have your navigation on your right hand, and that was it.
It was annoying.
Yeah. And now you can swap back and forth.
Yeah. This kind of plays into my journey with Falcon Age because I talked about Falcon Age so much leading up to launch. Yeah. I was like, this is my most anticipated, PSVR game of 2019.
It really was. Yeah.
And I talked to Eka in a developer interview. And I was just like, dude, I can't wait for your game. And I was so hyped for it. And when I first played it, I was like, oh man, like and it was really a lot of little things. Yeah. Right. It was the fact that I couldn't move with the correct move controller. It was that not all the buttons, everything felt like it was in the wrong place. There were some confusing objectives. Yes. And I was like, I completed this objective already. Why isn't it being crossed off my objective list? Right. And sometimes those objectives don't get crossed off until like long after you've done the thing. Like you do an extra thing and then it gets crossed off the list.
There was one of the patch notes specifically that mentioned, so basically you hit the first refinery. And what you're supposed to do is talk to a resistance member who tell you, "Oh, go back and see Auntie." Right. Now, if you didn't meet that resistance member and you figured, "Oh, I blew up this thing, so I'm going to go back and see Auntie," basically that task, even though you just did go see Auntie, that task would never go away because you'd have to technically get it from the resistance member, the get the assignment to go see Auntie. So then you would have to track all the way back. So it was there were a lot of little things like that.
There's a lot of little things, and if you were using full locomotion, if you were using teleportation and you're playing through this game, you wouldn't have even experienced half of my frustrations. Yeah, because again, the buttons were in the wrong place for full locomotion. On top of that, I was getting like caught in the world a little bit, when I was just like walking along. If like I was walking too close to like a cliff or something or a wall, I'd get caught in that. On top of that, there's all of these ramps everywhere, like these big metal ramps to walk up and down. And if you were walking down one, the game did this weird thing where you'd get stuck halfway through and then you'd walk out and then start walking down again. And it was like just really disjointed. It didn't feel right at all. And then on top of that, if you were walking around trying to keep your Falcon on your hand, which you can totally do in the non-VR version,
right?
There was no way to keep the Falcon on your hand walking around with full locomotion. If you're teleporting around everywhere, none of those things would have been an issue for you. So like there's a ton of people, like I saw Jonathan Dornbush's review on IGN, never addresses any of it because you watch his video, he's teleporting around. And I was like, oh dude, you like so for me, somebody who full locomotion, smooth turning, everything, like it was all of these little things that added up in my first playthrough. I was gonna say my first impressions, but no, I mean I played beginning to end 4 hours. I didn't really enjoy any of it. So it's one of these examples where it's patch 1.02 that changed everything. It's literally fixed now. Everything, every single complaint that I had is just fixed.
Right, and that kind of goes to probably explain, like, there was the live show a few weeks ago, or more than a month ago now, where we talked about it, and you were like, basically all those negatives, and I was like, I played it for a bit, and I don't feel, I mean, there's, problems here and there, but that's exactly it. I was doing teleportation, and he was doing it smooth. And you kind of, like, had a throwaway reference to it, but you can play this in non-VR.
Yes.
Don't, but you can.
You can also play with the DualShock 4.
Yes.
Don't, but you can.
Right.
Yeah, it's fine. Like if you don't have a PSVR headset, I can't imagine that you're watching the show right now.
Yeah. It's definitely. I mean, I guess conceptually this game doesn't need to be in VR, but to get that sense of immersion, to have the interaction with the bird really to its fullest, it needs to be in VR.
For me to enjoy this game the way it's meant to be enjoyed, it needs to be in VR, and it needs to be with Move controllers. From an accessibility standpoint, I understand that not everybody can use Move controllers.
Right.
Fine, right? But I think you're going to miss out on a big part of this game. Bonding with that bird really does require you to use both hands. So I'm not telling you not to play it if you can only use a DualShock 4. But the best way to play this is in VR with 2 Move controllers.
Right. But and like you said, we are team options. We're go team options. So playing, having the non-VR ability, that's great. That is a great option. Being able to play with multiple controller schemes, that's fantastic. I don't think an aim update is coming, so you guys just calm down on that, okay?
It'd be pretty cool, though.
Would you pet it with the gun? I don't know,
man. Honor and Duty D-Day can do it. Let's.
This is true.
We'll use a Move controller and name controller. Yeah. I don't know what's going on anymore. I think we need to rate this sucker.
Yeah. So our rating system, I tried to say scheme and system at the same time, and it did not work.
I like Skistum.
Our rating system is pretty simple. It's 1. You have to buy this game. If you have a PSVR, this is just the best of the best in the console. You need to have it. 2 is, sure, why not? If it's on sale at a decent price, or if it's a genre you particularly like, go ahead and pick it up. 3 is no. Friends don't let friends buy crap. Wow, I'm gonna try that sentence again.
Was there a W in that word? Quap?
Man. Friends don't let friends buy crap. We need to vote with our wallets and tell developers that we deserve better. So, 1, 2, or 3. What do you think?
Okay, so spoilers. If you didn't beat the game yet, cover your ears just for a minute.
Yes.
Because here's the thing: we talked about this. You're playing as a girl of color. We're talking about colonization, right? This is like a sensitive issue.
Yes.
Right. And I'm not saying that every game where you play as a person of color, or every game where that has a storyline that's this serious in nature, needs to get like crazy deep into either of those topics. Like, cool, they're here, and it's nice to see a different approach to things, and it's nice to see, but for me it never goes deep enough. Like the story in my book, it's a great setup, but it never really goes anywhere, right? In fact, my biggest issue with the game is that it's 3 hours for me, beginning to end, 3 hours, and it doesn't go far enough. You're given these options at the end.
Yeah.
It feels like a huge buildup. And maybe I'm reading too far into this, but it seems like at the very end, you don't know if you're on the right side or not.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit of like, hey, am I trusting the wrong people? And, maybe do I need to reconsider what I'm doing here?
Right.
And maybe I'm the bad guy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm reading too far into this.
No, I think that's there. That is there.
And then it ends.
Yeah.
Like literally the next moment, you're like, the end. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
That can't be it. That being said, I love this game. I absolutely love this game. And again, keep in mind that when I'm rating this for me. I'm not rating it for you. This is how I feel.
We're giving it his rating for you to watch.
This is how I feel about the game.
Yeah.
That's how I rate games. This is how I feel about it. I loved bonding with Little Tornado, which again, another huge negative was that they tell you for like an hour.
Yeah.
They're like, you're going to get to name the bird. You're going to get to name the bird. You're going to get to, and during that whole hour, I'm like, I've already named the bird.
Right.
I've named it Tornado. And then they're like, now you get to name the bird. And they give you a list.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Tornado's not on that list. I'm not happy about this. So like there's all these like negatives, right?
Yeah.
These ding, 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 dings against the game. And they drive me crazy. I wish crafting was a bigger system. I wish there was a reason to craft. I wish there was a reason to farm. Like there are all these. This is such a good setup for an amazing game. That said, with patch 1.02, I had a blast going through this, and I loved bonding with that bird.
Yeah.
And because of all that, I'm giving it a 1.
All right.
I'm a big fan, and just keep in mind that if you don't want to bond with the bird, this is the third time I've said it this time.
Yeah.
Then you might want to stay away.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of the core. And actually, it's weird. Like as much as I loved all the games that this team has put out, they're all kind of have the same issue. It's like this is a great idea.
Yeah.
There's some cool things happening here. Oh, we're done.
Yeah.
And Falcon Age is in a lot of ways the same. Like. I love this whole mechanic. It's there are so many games that try this kind of like, oh, here's you and your dog can do stuff, and then half the time it's like, no, just get the freaking dog out of here. Like Skyrim, dogs in Skyrim, oh my god, just no. Especially if you're trying to play stealth. Okay, it's just. But this is actually a game that has taken that assistant sort of character and given it a personality that's not annoying, that actually makes you want to bond with it, and is useful and actually does what you tell it to do. So, I mean, they absolutely nailed that part of it. And again, like the farming thing, that could be such a great idea. The story that's there, one thing you didn't mention is you're just so primed right off the bat. It's like, okay, we're the oppressed minority, so we're by default the good guys. And these, like right off the bat, the robots you interact with, they're clearly awful. Yeah, and bad and mean. But then you meet your first representative, like your first human representative of the Outer Ring Company, and she basically kind of makes the case for like, yeah, you know what, this place is a crap hole, and I'm just trying to make a better life for you. And which, honestly, there's a perspective there. So it's just a great, like, it does start that conversation about the really complicated ideas behind colonization and versus tradition versus advancement in technology. Like you're anti-technology, but one of the first farmers you meet is like, oh, technology is going to help us solve our problems. And so it does kind of like start to touch them on, it doesn't just say colonization was bad, or the people in my minority or necessarily the right people, which is a good message to say, I guess, but can be very oversimplified. It does have all these hints of the real complicated issues behind all of this, right. And then doesn't go any further with it. So, like the whole Sarangarai era thing, it's like right off the bat, the first time you learn your name, it's like, oh, great, we're going to have a message about that, and we're immediately going to kind of shelve that. But I'm on the same boat. Like, even with all the things that just kind of frustrating about it, it's so unique and interesting, and I love the art style. I love what they're trying to do. I love the fact that, Eka and his team are so dedicated to making this kind of story real and getting this kind of character out there, I'm going to have to give it a 1. If for no other reason than it is a lot of fun, and I just want to see them get more support so they can continue to improve this game and work on whatever's coming next.
Yeah, I will be extremely sad if we don't see more Falcon Age in the future.
Yeah,
because this is such an amazing prequel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
This is very much like they've set up an amazing world, an amazing story, an amazing concept, an amazing battle between possibly good and possibly evil. I just want to see more of it and really explore these themes more in this story and in this person's struggle more.
Right. We've made it known that we're kind of annoyed when a game launches with blah 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 Volume 1.
Yeah.
Saying, well, look out for or ends in a cliffhanger like Home Sweet Home. Come on, but if this honestly, if this came out and it said Falcon Age Chapter 1,
yeah,
I wouldn't even hesitate. Like, yep, okay, I can't wait for Chapter 2. You've set it up, awesome. Where's my DLC? Where's the rest of the story?
Yeah,
if you told me off the bat that this was just the prequel, cool, let's go. The fact that, as far as we know, this is the whole game. That's what I think is kind of temporary thing. I'm still saying it's a 1. You should buy this. We love this team. We love this game. But
and if this was a $60 game, we'd be having a much different conversation.
Yes,
we'd be like, hey, these mechanics never got fleshed out the way they were supposed to.
Yeah.
The story never got fleshed out the way it was supposed to. This and that. But this is a $20 game.
$20 game from any developer. Yeah.
And man, if you played it before patch 1.02 and you're like, man, these guys are totally overrating this game, go back and play it again.
Yes.
Because that patch again changed everything for me.
Yep.
And I'm super excited to get behind this game again. And I mean, it's only going to take them about another year to come up with another game, I'm guessing. So we can't wait to see what you guys do next. I think that's it.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching another episode of Why We Love PlayStation VR. Obviously, we want to know your thoughts on Falcon Age before, maybe, and after the patch. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you get the dragon head for the bird?
I didn't get the dragon head.
Oh,
no.
It breathes fire.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And if not, go back and get that because it's awesome. Also, what other games do you want us to play? The list is long and it gets longer all the time. Yep. Man, there's been a lot of updates for a lot of games recently. So we have a lot of games to play.
We got homework to do, man.
A lot of homework to do. But let us know what other games you want us to play. Obviously, we'll add them to the list. Falcon Age was on nobody's list because it just came out. No one expected us to do this soon. But man, some of the other ones you've recommended are coming up very, very soon.
Yes.
For another episode of Why We Love PlayStation VR, I'm Brian Paul.
I'm Dez.
And we'll see you next week.